Today's saint of the month is Leo the Great. He was born in 399 AD, and he died in 461. Leo is absolutely one of the greatest saints and greatest popes that we have ever had. And that is not just what I'm saying. This is what many popes have attested to, including, So it was Benedict XIV who declared him a doctor of the church in 1754. But in our modern times, we also have three popes that declared that Pope Leo the Great was the greatest pope ever, or possibly the greatest pope ever. And for those, we have Pope Pius XII, Pope Benedict XVI, and Pope John XXIII. They all attested to the same thing. So what we have here is a great saint, not only in his own personal holiness, but from the fact that he administered the church in ways that these popes find that he could be emulated. In other words, he's the model for popes in their estimation. So one of the things, so let me say first that to put him in context, there were 36 doctors of the church, of whom he is one of the first 12, and obviously one of the greatest. He has the title of great along with Gregory the Great, who succeeded him by about 100 years. So what was so great about him? He performed great works not only for the church, but also in the secular world. And he lived during the entire time of the collapse of the Roman Empire. So from the time that he was born, the empire was collapsing. And this was one of the Roman Empire is almost fused to the Catholic faith because it was so important to the growth of the Catholic faith. So he was born at a time that saw the entire collapse, and therefore he was very instrumental in holding up the church and preserving the faith during very tumultuous times. So let me tell you a little bit about its life. He grew up in Rome. He was born around 399 AD. Born in Rome to parents that obviously had enough money to provide for his education. We don't know very much about his education, but we can tell from his writings, from his actions, from the use of him by the superiors around him, how they used him for the consultations, that he had a very excellent education. He was a very learned person, obviously in theology, obviously in the scriptures, but also in the subjects of rhetoric and writing. He was very knowledgeable, and this comes through in how he produced things by his writings, his sermons, his letters, and the way he administrated later on the church. One of the things that is most unique about him is that he had, without any tutorial assistance whatsoever, he had an instinct for psychology, for human psychology. And that is what was underneath many of the actions that he performed, because he didn't do everything the same way. He tailored things to the situation, and that was the part of his greatness. So one of the things that, let me just tell you a little bit about his early life then. So because we know little about his education, we do happen to know once he entered the church in a significant way, he started as a deacon around the age of 19. And by the age of 22, he was already selected as an assistant to Pope Celestine. Pope Celestine, I think the third, I'm not sure, where he served for 10 years as an assistant to the Pope. And when Celestine died, Sixtus the Third was appointed to, or rose to office, and he served as his assistant also until he died in 440 AD. Now, during this period of time, he was developing his reputation, and it was so great that the court of Valentinian III which was in Ravenna, had asked the Pope to send this deacon to ameliorate the issues between two of the emperor's main people, namely Acetus, who was the head of the military. He was the commander of the military, and another head of the Praetorian Guard. These are two very powerful people, and Valentinian III actually asked the Pope to send this lowly deacon to see if he could mediate the problems between them. So he goes off to Gaul in 440 AD, and while he is on his travels and not yet undertaken his mission, the Pope died, and the people decided that they wanted to have this lowly deacon elevated to Pope. So he was recalled, and 5 weeks after he arrived, he ascended to the papacy. So then began 21 years of an amazing papacy that brought him the title of great, even while he was still alive, and that echoes through the years right to this current time. So let's see. So I will finish up this part about his life by saying that he died in 461, and he was buried at first in the Vatican Church, and then subsequently he was exhumed and reburied in the Basilica of St. Peter's. And the eminences which he had arrived by the time of this happening is demonstrated by the fact that his altar containing his remains is very close to St. Peter's in the Basilica. And behind his altar is an immense portrait, or mural, of one of his greatest exploits as in the secular world. And I'll tell you about this in just a second. So as far as his accomplishments are concerned, there are two main things I want to talk about. One is in the secular realm, and the other is in the realm of the church and through his papacy. And in the secular realm, it's kind of exciting, and it sets the stage for understanding what happened in the spiritual world, in the world of the church that he was leading. So what happened was in 452, you heard of the great Attila the Hun. Well, this is the great encounter of history. And it goes down in history, actually, as very important. And this is one of the things that made this man great, was that Valentinian III, he was a very weak emperor. He was actually the emperor for about 40 years. And he, again, asked Leo, who he had previously asked when he was a deacon, now he asked Leo to please go and meet with Attila the Hun, who was threatening Italy. Now, what Attila was doing, this is just not an average guy. Attila the Hun was the head of a great Hunnic empire, and he had started his rampage from Greece, and he went from east to west, rampaging all the way over to Gaul. And when he reached Gaul, he met with Acetus, who was the great general by then. And in fact, he was arguably the most powerful person in the empire because we had a very weak Valentinian. Anyway, so he met Acetus, and Acetus conquered him in Gaul. So he turned south and started heading into Italy, where he rampaged the whole northern part of Italy. And then when he was almost at Rome, the emperor asked Leo to please go and see if he could use his diplomacy, which he did in a magnificent way. And what he did was he actually, what I have here is, I think I have the words, I wish I had the words that he said. Maybe next time when I finish up this, I'll be able to read you the words that he actually said that convinced Attila to turn back. Attila then headed north, and he never did accost the people of the southern part of Italy. He didn't touch Rome. he left, and a year later he died of natural causes. Now, there was the second episode. 3 years later, Genseric, who was the head of the Vandals, now the Vandals were down in like Libya, where Libya is today, they came across the water and they invaded Italy. And they were rampaging all over. And he again met with this troublemaker, and he persuaded him not only, he persuaded him not to kill anybody, not to set any fires, and to preserve the churches. So although they did attack Rome, a lot of the things were preserved that otherwise might have been lost. So these two things in the secular realm were things that made him very great in modern secular history. So now I'm going to go on to, actually what I think I'm going to do is end right now, because what I want to do next time is to spend 10 minutes telling you about the Council of Chalcedon. And I think that will take 10 minutes, and I don't want to truncate that into two parts because it's too important. Let me just set the stage for Chalcedon in just a few words. So far there have been 21 ecumenical councils. The last one was Vatican II. Out of these 21, there are 4 that keep coming up in history. One is Nicene in 325, excuse me. The next one is Chalcedon, which was in 451. The next one was Trent. What year? 15 something. And then the last one was Vatican II, and that keeps coming up because there's a lot of controversy about that. So that's the context, that Chalcedon is one of the greatest of the ecumenical councils, and Leo was the central figure of Chalcedon. He wasn't even present, but because of what he did with regard to his assertion of papal primacy and his fine understanding of theology and his approach to squelching heresies that came up, in particular for this particular purpose, it was the heresy of Eutechiaism, which was being taught by an archimandrite, Eutyches. It was a heresy that basically said that Christ only had one nature. After he was born, he only had a divine nature, and Leo was defending that that Christ had the nature of God and the nature of man. So that sets the stage for Chalcedon, so you understand that what is coming is a great council. And I'll tell you the backstory about how it started. I'll tell you about the contents of the council, how it came off, and then I'll tell you about the repercussions which still reverberate today. We still have reverberations of the council today.